Since we ended up with this great big room for our redneck rec room, we figured what could be more redneck than having a pool table, right? After all, we play pool all the time, which translates into pretty much never. But how does one go about getting a pool table? Seriously, have you ever seen how much it costs to get a new pool table? I know we've said this before, but we really try to do everything we can to buy used, secondhand, upcycle, or recycle things. And a pool table is going to be no different.
So what's the next step? Well, I looked on KSL Classifieds for used pool tables. What could possibly go wrong? Asterisk, KSL Classifieds is the local equivalent of Craigslist. So for anyone out there hoping to buy a used pool table and wondering what could possibly go wrong, I'll tell you everything that I learned along the way and what we had to do to get our bargain used pool table. I'd been looking on the classifieds for a couple of months, and I missed a table or two that looked pretty good. Then this one showed up for 300 bucks. Yeah, I could do 300 bucks.
So first thing first, how on earth am I going to get this pool table home? Well, I happen to have a buddy who lived in an old neighborhood who has a truck and a couple of boys. So I contacted him and said, hey, look, if I give you some money for gas and give you some extra cash beyond that, would you be willing to go out 30-mile trip to get this pool table with me? And he said, yeah, sure, I'd come and do that for you. And I just figured, great, we'll get four kind of strong guys. We'll get the pool table, we'll lift it up, and we'll put it in the back of the truck, and we'll be on our way. That's not really how it went. So the guy we ended up buying the pool table from, he was in the process of moving, and it probably didn't really click in my head, but there's a reason that there are so many houses that sell with the pool tables included as a bonus. Yeah, we know why now. We got into the room and we figured we'll each just take a corner of the pool table and we'll go ahead and lift and we'll just get it up off the ground. And then we would worry about taking the legs off. So we did that. Everybody took a corner and we didn't lift. This thing was heavy. So at that point, we rolled it onto its side, broke a couple of corner pieces in the process. Thankfully, my buddy who has the truck, he's actually really handy and had tools in his car. So for the next half hour, 45 minutes, we were taking the legs off. Got the legs off. Are we going to be able to lift it now? Nope. It was still way too heavy to do that. So then we started stripping off the felt and removing the bumpers and everything. We got down to the bottom, and if you're not really a pool table person, you may not know this, but there is a piece of slate on solid pool tables. Well, this one, the slate was three separate pieces. We went ahead, we took it all apart, and finally we were able to take those individual slate pieces, the legs, the sides, the bumpers and everything, and move it out to the truck. Except it wasn't just that easy either, because this was at late winter time when we were doing it, and we had to take them up a hill that was still covered in 6 inches of snow. Thankfully, no damage, nobody fell, nothing else was hurt, and we got into the truck and headed home. Here I am thinking, we're going to get home, we'll slap this thing back together, and we'll be able to shoot a couple of rounds of 8-ball. What a maroon. Not even close to that. So once we did have it home and we had it in the storage area, I knew there was no way I was going to be able to put it back together. We happen to live in a nice neighborhood that has a really active Facebook page. So I put it out there on the Facebook page. Hey, does anybody know someone who has refelted a pool table for them recently? And I did get about a half a dozen responses. I did make the quick phone calls to each of those as I went along. And sure enough, I found out most of them were about the same price to come and refelt the table. So I kind of did the dartboard thing. And we chose a guy named Howard. And I'm going to go ahead and put his name and everything in my notes so that if you want to do that and you happen to live somewhere along the Wasatch Front in Salt Lake, you can contact Howard.
Then I called Howard and he gave me a reasonable price. The trouble was it was going to take almost a month to get to me. Really? There are that many people redoing pool tables? Who knew? When I told him the scenario, he quizzed me about having all the parts and pieces. I took a few photos of the disassembled table to send over to him. And I assured him I kept every single screw. The evening before the install, I went down with the vacuum, making sure it was clean and ready for the table. I knew once it was in place, I was never going to move it again. We joke with kids all the time that they can sell it with the house when we die. All right, after making sure Howard and assistant Jeremy were cool with me videoing the whole thing, they got down to work. Still, here I am thinking this is going to take just a few hours. Oh, and the pool table is like 50 years old, and of course, the manufacturer no longer exists. The legs and frame went in pretty easy. I worked at the gaming table at the other end of the room and couldn't help but ask questions continually and lend a hand when I could. Jeremy and Howard tightened everything up and vacuumed as they went. Did you know that there is actually a standard distance from a wall that a pool table should be? Apparently that standard distance is 4 feet. After I looked at how far that went into the rest of the room, I asked Howard for plan B. 3 feet was doable. The noob, aka me, would never even have thought how important it is to start at the base and level everything up. Then came the 3 slabs. Next step was to remove all the old glue from the joints, then back up all the leftovers. Cleaning up the edges and surfaces were really important. While I kept asking Howard questions, Jeremy was busy stripping the felt off the bumpers. I would have never known this or even how to check. But he dodged a bullet, and the bumpers were in really good condition, especially for a 50-year-old table. So if you consider buying a used table, make sure the bumpers are in good shape. After getting the slabs in place and bolted, Howard started cleaning again. He didn't say anything, but I think there may have been some extra damage to the slate in the far corner. He spent quite a bit of time working on it. Oh, and guess what? More leveling and shims before cinching down the slate. Now it was time to heat up the joints and smooth it out one more time before laying out the felt. Except wait, the ancient pockets were a wreck and wouldn't work anymore. And when we took the table apart by laying it on its side, we smashed the corner plastic pieces and they couldn't be used anymore. So the table sat for a couple weeks while Howard did his magic to find corners that would work and get replacement pockets for our ancient table. When they did come back, we were ready to do the felt. Rebecca really liked this royal blue. Me, I was kind of leaning toward the classic green. Win some, lose some, then give the felt the magic shakeout, then lay out some old newspaper to avoid the overspray. Yeah, it was just spray adhesive. It was probably industrial strength, but still, spray adhesive? I asked if they would iron out the felt afterward. He looked at me as if I were asking a dumb question. The answer is no, there would be no ironing. Now they stretched the felt tight and actually used that wonder of wonders, duct tape, to hold it in place under the edges while the adhesive dried. I helped a wee bit with the aprons. Unfortunately, one of the aprons was a little damaged from the professional disassembly and required some glue and clamping before being attached. At this point, they took razor blades and neatly trimmed all the excess felt. We were on a roll and nearing the finish line when they started dry fitting the bumpers. Howard had taken the bumpers with after the last visit and refelted the bumpers in his shop, so they were ready to go. Sometimes I get so impatient with stuff like this. I kept thinking, come on Howard, just slap that thing back together. Well, I'm really glad these two guys are pool table craftsmen and not just a weekend do-it-yourselfer. The corners Howard found were nearly a perfect match, and this set is metal. It looks a heck of a lot better. Yeah, if you're looking, there is a chunk of the wood veneer missing on the edge closest to the camera. I've already been looking around to see how I can fix it, but that'll have to be a different video. And now to install the pockets. Before cinching down the bumper rails, they measured them out and made sure they were straight. Regular non-pool playing folks like us would never even think about this stuff. Okay, One more vacuum and clean. Shoot a few balls around, and one last leveling. I guess it was good it sat waiting for a couple weeks because the table had settled some. Finally, done.
So there were a couple of things that Howard went over with me before he left, which was a good thing. One of those really ironic things, a 50-year-old pool table actually came with really good pool balls. So we lucked out and got the really good pool balls, and they seemed to work just fine. Part of the tutorial that he gave me was how to clean the pool balls. He said I could use just like Windex or something to get the scuffs off, but just to be really careful, get a soft cloth, maybe like t-shirt material or something, and wipe them down really well afterward, because the last thing you want is a pool ball to go rolling across the table and end up leaving a streak or a mark that bleaches out your new felt. We actually also lucked out pretty good, he said, because the cue sticks that we got were in pretty good shape and they have a removable tip. So one thing is, you'll notice that we have them laying here on the pool table. That's because you never leave a pool cue up against the wall like that, because it could warp them. The other thing about the pool cues that he told me was when we got them, they were really flat on the top. And so he told me I needed to get about 100 grit sandpaper and just shape them so that they rounded out the top. And I did that. It took not too long to do. I can imagine after time I'm going to have to replace the tips altogether, but for right now, I'll just try to keep them nice and rounded. Another thing you might see is when you get the chalk, and I'm not really good enough to know why I'm chalking the end of my pool cue anyway, but never to use it like a pencil sharpener to cut a hole in the middle, but to be really deliberate and go around the edges like that so it's nice and smooth. One thing you may have noticed when you're looking at pool tables is sometimes they'll have a brush. And he said I could get a brush, but he really recommended vacuuming the felt. And to make sure when you do vacuum the felt, you always vacuum it in the same direction. You can just use like the handheld brushy thing on your vacuum. But he did have a really cool meant for pool tables attachment that I said the next time you come by or you're in the area doing another table, if you wouldn't mind bringing me one of those and a rack so I can actually hang the sticks on the wall rather than laying on the table all the time.
One rule was really important. You notice throughout the video how it was about making it level and everything. So never stand on a pool table, never sit on a pool table, and never put anything very heavy on a pool table, because it's going to knock it off balance and then the balls are going to roll all over anyway.
There is one last thing we're going to go ahead and do for our pool table. And I wasn't sure what he would say to me when I mentioned this, but we really do like to play ping pong. I've got a son who's really fanatical about it. We're going to get a ping pong table topper. That'll be the next step for this part of the Redneck Rec Room. Howard actually sells those, and he said, yeah, those are a great option to have. So we'll go ahead and do that in the near future. Excited for that part. And there you have it. New, old, used pool table that actually turned out really well. We're really happy with it. So I'm hoping if you're ever considering getting a pool table like we did, yes, it was a great deal at $300, but we've really got lucky because this could have been a real mess. But hopefully, if you're looking at getting a used pool table, this little video has helped you make a decision whether it's the right thing to do for you or not. It apparently was for us, and we're happy with it. Just remember, if you're going to be that person getting a used pool table, it's likely that you're going to have to be the one to go and pick it up, disassemble it, and get it to your house. I did notice before we did all of this that on the KSL page that I mentioned earlier, there were ads for companies that would actually go take it apart for you and deliver it. But I thought, oh, that's too expensive. But looking back now, I paid that anyway. So that might be a better option for you if you don't own a pickup truck and you don't have a bunch of burly friends to help you out. So I hope this has been something useful for you if you are considering getting a pool table for yourself. If you've liked our videos, give us a like. Better yet, subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video. Thanks.